Freud is the recognized leader in manufacturing superior quality cutting tools. Freud has been leading cutting tool manufacturing technology for nearly 50 years. Professional and serious woodworkers consider Freud to be the step-up product of choice. Freud's state-of-the-art facilities produce a full line of premium saw blades, router bits, shaper cutters, Forstner and boring bits, hand tools, and power tools to choose from. Noted woodworking author and speaker Roger Cliffe will describe saw blade selection and identification. Roger has authored 8 books, 15 videos in the field of woodworking, and he has been the featured speaker of woodworking shows in the United States and Canada with 25 years experience in the field of woodworking. He is the contributing author to leading periodicals, including Wood Magazine and American Woodworker. Now, here's Roger.
As a sales associate, many customers come in and want to know what blade should I use for a job. That really depends on what they're doing and what machine they're working with. The goal of this tape is to help you better understand their needs and select the appropriate blade. One of the easiest ways to divide blades up for our selection purposes is, are you using it for construction work or for finish work? Let's take a look at these blades and some of the materials that they do a superior job on. All of the blades here are what we call construction blades, and they're designed for cutting construction materials. Probably the most common is what we know as the framing members, the 2x4s, 2x6s, and so forth that frame the house. We might also be doing decking where we have treated lumber, and they're often cut. They're a very abrasive material and require a good quality blade. And a lot of sheet goods are also used, that is the plywoods and the panelings that are used to sheathe a house or put the roof on. All of the blades that you see here are designed for that purpose. Another construction material that's sometimes used is what we call the forms, the concrete forms, or just dirty lumber that's being recycled. All of these blades will do an excellent job on that, but we have the Diablo blade, which is unique for that purpose. The Diablo blade is made to the high quality standards of all the other construction blades, except it can also be discarded at the end of the use. This enables you to have 2 or 3 of these in the truck for the construction job and just change them as needed. If you hit a nail or some other abrasive material, as they become dull, they can be discarded. Let's take a look at what we call the finish blades. And over here we have a couple groups of the finish blades. You can cut the hardwood such as cherry and oak and other materials of that nature. Some of the paneling materials we use in and outside the house require high quality cuts, and again, these blades are perfect for that. A lot of times we do trim work that requires miters. All of the doors and windows and so forth that are cased use the high quality blades. We can also cut some of the other materials as finished materials, the plywoods and the particle boards. These are abrasive materials, but usually we require a little higher quality cut on these because of the types of work we're doing with them. So that's one consideration. Another consideration is the size of the kerf. Now the kerf may be a new word to you, but let me show you something here. The cuts in these pieces of wood, the opening where the wood has been removed, is also referred to as the kerf. If you look at the lower one here, you'll see that it is narrower or thinner than the one on top. The narrow one is what we call a thin kerf blade, and the larger one is what we call a standard kerf blade. Now, these are thin kerf blades over here, and they're designed with a couple advantages for the world of construction work. That is, in the field, we usually don't have the high horsepower, and we have some limitations such as long extension cords that make it more difficult to get a high quality cut. By having a thinner kerf, we use less electrical power. When we go to the shop, it's a little bit different. We generally favor the standard blades with a standard kerf. The reason for that is we have more electrical power available to us, and in addition, we have higher horsepower machinery. The only real distinction between the thin kerf and the standard kerf blades is the size of the carbide tips. The carbide tips are larger on the standard kerf blades, and that allows for more resharpenings. Those who are buying the blades for lifelong use tend to favor the standard kerf. One other feature available on selected Freud blades is the Teflon coating. This is a DuPont industrial Teflon. The most important part of this is there's reduced friction in the cut. This means you can feed wood into it faster and get a high quality cut. Second, with reduced friction is there's less burning. This means you're going to get a straighter cut because there's no heat buildup in the blade to cause distortion, and the appearance of the cut will be better because there's less burning of the wood. One other feature that you want to think about with Teflon coating is that you can easily clean this blade of any pitch accumulation. This resists the accumulation, but you can use soap and water to clean it, a real benefit. The other thing about this coating is that there's going to be a resistance to rusting with this blade, and that's an important consideration if the blade's going to be used in a damp environment. So these are some factors with the Teflon coating. I'd like to now clear the bench and reset because I'd like to show you some of the tooth configurations available on various Freud blades. I want to talk now about the carbide tips found on Freud blades. The carbide tip actually does the cutting, and it's adhered to the plate of the blade with a braze joint. Let's take a look at that. The carbide tip, a micrograin carbide, is adhered to the plate with a braze joint. The braze joint is known as a tri-metal braze joint on Freud blades. It's unique to them. There's 3 layers there, 2 silver with a layer of copper sandwiched between them. This results in a superior bond, and with a copper layer in the middle, it resists impact, such as a loose knot that might roll and put extreme stress on a carbide tip. The carbide tips themselves are micrograin carbide, and a micrograin carbide is much denser because there's more carbide in it. As you look at this carbide tip, you'll also see that the grind marks are very small. The reason for that is we use a very fine grinding wheel, and what that does, it produces more carbide at the cutting edge. That is, because the grinds are so fine, there's more carbide at the cutting edge. The net effect for the customer is this. There's more carbide to resist wear, so it lasts longer, and it's sharper out of the box, so it gives better results day one. So these are important benefits to point out to the end user. I want to now show you the shapes of the carbide tips so you can better understand their application. First, we have the square tip or flat top. Flat top is the term you'll find used most often. As you look at this flat top tooth, you'll see that it's square, but it descends on the back to provide cutting clearance. This is designed best for ripping and combination work. You'll find it used on table saws, radial arm saws most often, and in some portable circular sawing machines. The next one is the alternate top bevel. As you notice, these carbide tips form a bevel across the front, alternating in the direction that they go. They come to a point. That point then enters the wood before the rest of the carbide tip, and it gives you a very, very fine edge. This would be used for cross-cutting and mitering work. Table saw, radial saw, motorized miter box would be the 3 machines most likely to use these. Third in the line is what we call a triple chip configuration, and it's really a combination of 2 teeth, a flat top again, followed by a flat top with the corners cut off. The one with the corners cut off enters the wood first and does most of the cutting. The square one comes behind and cleans it up. Now, this is used in man-made materials such as particle board and melamine face board. It's also used in non-ferrous metals such as aluminum and brass. Where would you use that in the field? Possibly cutting a threshold or other metal component, aluminum siding, for example. So these are some configurations of teeth and where they would be used. As you look at the blades, make sure that that's the appropriate tooth configuration for the job you're doing. Now let's take a look at the 2 designs or 2 lines of blades that you're going to have in the store. The TK, or thin kerf, and the LU, or industrial. All Freud blades are made with the same quality manufacturing standards, but there are some differences between the TK and LU lines. Those distinctions are important for the customer depending on what their use and desires are. Let's talk about those first. As you look at the blade, right above the Freud trademark, you'll see the TK or LU designation telling you the number of the blade. This will help in selection. Beneath that, you'll see a bar graph telling you about the various applications of the blade and whether it's recommended, not recommended, excellent, and so forth. So this information will help you help the customer get the right blade. Now, the distinctions between the TK and LU will depend on the needs of the customer. When the customer puts cost above blade longevity as a consideration, they will probably go with a TK blade. This customer usually is beginning in the business, that is, they're making a deck or doing one small project, and this is a perfect blade for them. The serious hobbyist, professional, and tradesperson will probably go to the LU blade. And the reason they will, it's designed for continuous use, it has a heavy plate, and upon careful inspection, you'll notice something about it. First, on the TK blade, if you look at the carbide tips, they are somewhat smaller than the ones on the LU blade. This means the LU blade will last longer. You can sharpen it several more times. So the customer will have to make this decision. You can aid them by telling them the differences and let them make up their mind based on their needs. Another important thing that I'm going to do now is I'm going to reset the bench and then share with you some of the manufacturing techniques that go across all blades made by Freud so that you can better share that information with the customer. As a sales associate, you may be asked, what makes Freud blades better than the competition? Number one on that list is the carbide itself. Freud controls the manufacture of all the carbide, which means the quality is an absolute. They're not relying on vendors to supply a carbide of questionable quality. Second is the plate. The plate is a very durable steel, harder than the competition, so hard that it cannot be stamped. It has to be laser cut. In this laser cutting, we are guaranteed a true flat blade that doesn't distort in the cut. In addition to that, we've done a few other things. First, the arbor hole has been cut in absolutely dead center, so we know it's going to turn in a true orbit. We've also cut expansion slots in where necessary. On certain blades, as the blade heats up, there could be distortion or deflection in the blade. This allows for that expansion as it heats and makes it a much truer cut. The other thing that these expansion slots have been designed to do is reduce that annoying whistling you hear with some of the competitors' blades. A nice quality, quiet cut, very important. Another aspect of the arbor hole is on the 7 1/4 and 8 1/4 we have allowed for a diamond cutout. This allows them to be used on worm drive saws. Finally, as you look at the blades, some of these will have an anti-kickback shoulder on them. These anti-kickback shoulders are there to reduce the effect of kickback. You won't find these on some of the cross-cutting blades because the teeth are so close together and the fact that they're used strictly for cross-cutting. Now, one other aspect on the blades 10-inch and larger is the tension ring. You can feel this with your fingers as you pull them across the blade. This tension ring allows the blade to run truer. Now, having given you some of the advantages of Freud blades, I have a few questions for you. Question 1. As a sales associate, what would you say to the customer that asks, what makes the Freud blade better than the competition? You may want to stop the tape to answer this question. Give yourself 1 point for each of these that you've gotten correct. We're going to focus on the carbide tips first. First, the carbide itself. Freud controls the manufacturer, so the quality remains constant and excellent. Second, the trimetal brazing, which is an impact resistance. Remember the sandwich layer of copper? Third, the fine grinding. Look at those marks. They're so small, you know that the blade comes out of the package sharper and stays sharp longer. Let's now look at the plate itself. First, it's very hard. The only way to cut it was a laser. It's not stamped. Then, 5, the expansion slots, also cut with laser to control expansion of the blade and reduce the noise. Whisper quiet cuts is what we'll get. 6, the anti-kickback shoulders, which reduce the effect of kickbacks. Now, as a bonus, if you said that they have a lifetime guarantee, give yourself 2 points. We didn't say that in the video, but if you've been reading the literature, you'd already know that. Question 2. If a customer comes to you and says, I'm building a deck on my house. I've got a portable circular saw and I need a new blade for it. Which blade would you recommend? You may wish to stop the tape now and decide what's best. This wasn't a trick question, but there's actually more than one answer to it. First, if the customer was working with a treated lumber, the best choice would be the Diablo 24 tooth. That's because it has a Teflon coating and wouldn't allow for any buildup of pitch or resin on it. If, on the other hand, the customer said, I'm using a high-quality wood like redwood, let's say, and I'm very concerned about the quality of the cut, then the TK303 would be a better choice. Now, if you answered with either one of these, give yourself a point. But if you thought you better ask some more questions, give yourself 2 points. Remember, asking the questions and satisfying the customer needs are the most important part of blade selection. Now, let's go on to question 3. If a customer asks, what is the difference between an LU and a TK series blade, what would you tell them? You may want to stop for a minute, take a look at a few of these blades before you formulate your answer. Stop the tape now. If you said TK series blades stood for thin kerf, give yourself a point. If you said they took less energy to cut, give yourself another point. If you said that they could be used with lower powered saws, yet again another point. Now how about the LU blades? If you said that they had a premium size carbide tip, give yourself a point. If you said that the carbide tips allowed for a lifetime of use because you could sharpen them a number of times, give yourself a point. If you said they were favored by professionals for a lifetime of use and continuous duty, also give yourself a point. Now, question 4. What 3 sources for information about Freud blades can you name? You may wish to stop the tape now to identify those. Look over the materials at hand. There are 3 sources of information about Freud blades. The number 1 and most obvious is right here on the front of the blade. If the blade's still in the package, check the back of the package. And if you don't get enough information there or you'd like additional information, consult the current Freud catalog. Now, give yourself 1 point for any of these answers you got correct. I'm going to stop here for a minute, reset, and give you some information about dado heads. So I'll be back shortly. A question often asked is, what is a dado? I think there's actually 2 answers to that. First, the dado that's cut, and second, the cutter that makes the dado. Let's take a look at the dado that's cut in wood first. A dado is a U-shaped channel that goes across the grain or with the grain in plywood or solid wood. Here's a couple examples in plywood. In solid wood, I've got an example where a dado went across the grain, and then on the edges of both this plywood and solid wood, we've got an L-shaped channel or a rabbet. All of these can be made with a dado head. In addition, here's a tenon that's been cut on the end. This tenon is a reduced thickness and it would fit into a mating part known as a mortise, also a cut made by the dado head. I have 2 different dado heads out here, the SD208 and the SD508. They have some similarities and some differences. Let's start with the similarities. Both sets have a pair of cutters and a series of chippers. The cutters are about the same, except this has 12 teeth on it, and this one has 24 teeth on it. Now let's take a look at the chippers. The chipper on the SD208 has 2 wings, and on the 508 the chipper has 4 wings or cutters. In either case, they produce a flat bottom cut, but there are some differences in them. The 508 is the premium dado head. In addition, both sets come with a series of spacers that can be used in between the cutters and chippers to adjust for a unique size piece of wood. Now, what about the use of these? When you use either set, you start with 2 cutters and you add chippers in between them. For example, if you wanted a 3/8 cut, you would use 2 1/8" cutters with a 1/8" chipper in between. If you wanted a 5/16", you would use the 2 1/8" cutters with a 1/16" chipper in between. Both sets have those provisions. There is one difference in the chippers in this set. There is a 3/32 chipper, and that's designed to accommodate plywood. Most plywood is 1/32 under the nominal size, so by using a 3/32 chipper, we can accommodate that. Both of these sets can be used on either a table or radial arm saw. If they're used on a table saw, there is one consideration. You require an additional accessory, a throat plate. The throat plate goes in the middle of the table and has an opening designed to accommodate the size of the dado head. So if the customer is looking to use this on a table saw, be sure they get the appropriate throat plate for their brand of saw. As you look at these, they both come in a similar packaging. The premium set, the 508, comes in a carrying case type box. The 208 comes in a package that hangs on the wall. Both of these have the same components: 2 cutters, a series of chippers, and the spacers. Now, the instructions for this set are on the back of the package. The instructions for this set are in the inside of the box. Look for those and share those with the customer so they better understand how to use this before they take it home. Make sure it's what they need. Help them select the right one. The SD208 is designed for hobby use, home use. The SD508 is more of a premium set designed for continuous use by professionals, serious amateurs, cabinet makers, and the like. With either of these sets, remember they have the lifetime guarantee. Quality cutting begins with quality tools. Remember, Freud, it's precisely what you need.